What if the rejection you're grieving right now isn't a setback at all, but the very thing saving you from a path that would have broken you? We tend to treat rejection as proof of failure, something personal, a mark against our worth. But in the hands of God, rejection is rarely about your value, it's about your direction. The moment you feel that sting of being turned away, it's easy to assume you've lost something important. Yet, from a higher perspective, you may have just been spared from something that would have delayed your purpose or diluted your calling. God sees the full map of your life, and sometimes He has to block your path so you don't settle for less than what He's planned. That no. You heard may feel like an ending, but in God's economy, it's often the first step toward a far greater wise. The question is whether you will trust His hand when you can't yet see His design. Rejection has a way of feeling final. A job you didn't get, a relationship that ended, an opportunity that slipped through your hands. It's easy to frame these moments as the closing of a chapter you desperately wanted to write. But in the context of God's plan, rejection is rarely about the end of your story. More often, it is the redirection of it. And this is where perspective becomes everything. When you encounter rejection, the natural instinct is to focus on what's been lost. Your mind replays the what ifs and if onlys like a loop you can't turn off. But that's because you're seeing only one frame of a much larger picture. God, on the other hand, sees the whole film. He knows what lies around the corner. The opportunities you can't yet see, the dangers you don't yet recognize, the timing you don't yet understand. Sometimes He closes a door not because you're unworthy to walk through it, but because what's on the other side would pull you away from the life He's shaping for you. Psychologically, reframing rejection as redirection changes everything. Instead of internalizing it as a statement about your inadequacy, you start interpreting it as a protective measure. This doesn't remove the sting, but it transforms the sting into something you can grow from. You stop asking, "Why am I not good enough?" and start asking, "What is God protecting me from?" Or, "What is He leading me toward instead?" That shift in questioning moves you from despair into curiosity, from passivity into readiness. There's also a practical wisdom here. Many of the greatest breakthroughs in life are preceded by disappointments that force a change in course. You may have planned to go one way, but God rerouted you, and in hindsight, that detour became the most important stretch of the journey. Think of Joseph in the Old Testament, sold into slavery by his brothers, wrongfully imprisoned, overlooked for years. It would have been easy for him to see each event as proof that his life was off track. Yet each rejection moved him closer to the position where he would save nations from famine. The road that didn't look like progress, but it was progress all the same. Philosophically, this ties to a deeper truth: our plans are inherently limited by our perspective. We choose based on what we know, and what we know is a fraction of reality. God, however, operates from omniscience. His redirections are not random, they are intentional, precise, and purposeful. To resist them is to assume that your partial view of life is more accurate than His complete one. So, the challenge is not merely to survive rejection, but to reinterpret it in real time as movement, not away from your destiny, but toward it. That takes humility, it takes faith, and it takes the courage to let go of the plan you thought was perfect in order to embrace the one that actually is. Because in the end, the rejection you're fighting to understand today may be the exact reason you arrive exactly where you were meant to be tomorrow. One of the most important reasons to accept rejection is that God sees what you cannot. This is not just a theological statement. It's a recognition of the limits of human perspective. You and I make decisions based on what we know, what we've experienced, and what we can imagine. But all of that is finite. We can't see every hidden motive in people's hearts, every future outcome of our choices, or every ripple effect our actions might cause. God can. And because He can, His guidance will sometimes take the form of removing something from our path that we would have clung to if left to our own judgment. The difficulty is that in the moment, rejection rarely feels protective. It feels personal. We often interpret it as a judgment against our worth or ability. But from God's vantage point, it may be the most loving thing He could do for us. He sees the long-term consequences we would never predict. That job you desperately wanted might have drawn you into an environment that slowly eroded your values. That relationship you fought to keep might have drained your energy and dulled your vision. That opportunity you thought was perfect might have locked you into a life far smaller than the one you were made for. Psychologically, this is where trust becomes essential. If you believe that God's wisdom is greater than yours, then you must also believe that His now carries the same love and intentionality as His yes. It's easy to trust God when doors swing wide open. It's harder when they close in your face. But often, it's in those closed door moments that your faith is tested most deeply, not in whether you believe God exists, but in whether you believe He is good. From a philosophical standpoint, this touches on the nature of divine providence. If God is truly omniscient, then His decisions are never impulsive, never arbitrary. Every delay, every denial is consistent with His larger design for your life. To fight against that is to assume that you're limited. Momentary understanding is more reliable than His eternal, all-encompassing vision. That's not humility, that's pride disguised as disappointment. In practice, learning to rest in this truth requires discipline. It means resisting the urge to rewrite your worth based on human approval. It means refusing to chase after what God has clearly removed from your path. And it means actively preparing yourself for the next opportunity He places before you, knowing that it will align with His timing, His protection, and His purpose. The reality is, God's rejections are often God's rescues in disguise. You may not see it now, but one day you'll look back and realize that what felt like loss was actually the first act of preservation. So the next time you hear a no, you didn't want, don't just see it as the end of an opportunity. See it as the evidence that you are guided by someone who knows exactly where you need to be and exactly what you need to avoid to get there. Disappointment is an unavoidable part of rejection. You invest your time, your energy, and often a piece of your heart into something only to watch it slip away. The emotional pull in that moment is strong. Frustration, sadness, even anger. And if you're not careful, those feelings can harden into bitterness. But this is where faith has to overrule emotion. Trusting God's wisdom over your immediate feelings is not about suppressing those emotions. It's about putting them in their rightful place. They are real, but they are not the final authority. The danger with letting feelings lead the way is that emotions, while powerful, are reactive. They respond to what is seen and experienced in the moment, not to the unseen work God is doing in the background. If you allow your feelings to dictate your interpretation of events, you'll always be a prisoner to the present moment. Faith interrupts that cycle. It acknowledges the pain of the no, while still affirming that God's hand is steady, even when yours is trembling. Psychologically, this is an exercise in cognitive reframing, choosing to interpret your circumstances through the lens of trust rather than loss. When you decide that God's wisdom is superior to your own, it changes the way you process rejection. Instead of asking why this is happening to you, you begin asking how this is happening for you. That small shift transforms rejection from an attack on your worth into an act of divine strategy. It takes the sting and reshapes it into a stepping stone. From a philosophical standpoint, this is an issue of authority. Either your emotions hold ultimate authority over your decisions or God does. If God does, then you must accept that His perspective will at times run counter to your feelings. And that's not a flaw in His plan, it's evidence of His higher knowledge. You might see a closed door and feel abandoned. God sees that same door and knows it leads to a dead end. To trust Him in that moment is to choose allegiance to truth over allegiance to comfort. This doesn't mean you shut off your heart. Faith doesn't deny grief, it puts grief in context. You can cry over a loss and still believe that it is leading to something better. You can acknowledge the ache without allowing it to turn into resentment. The key is to keep moving forward, not in blind optimism, but in informed trust that God's vision for your life includes things you cannot yet imagine. At the end of the day, emotions make great signals, but terrible masters. They can tell you something has changed, but they cannot always tell you why it changed or what will come of it. Only God can do that. So the next time rejection tempts you to spiral into frustration or self-doubt, pause and ask, will I let this moment be defined by what I feel or by what I know to be true about God? Because in the long run, feelings fade, but God's plan stands. It's easy to think of rejection as something that takes away from you, a subtraction from your life. But when God is in the equation, rejection can be the very thing that makes space for something far greater. Every no you encounter carries with it the possibility of a better yes waiting ahead. The problem is, we often cling so tightly to what we've lost that we leave no room to receive what's next. The reality is that God's timing and provision are always intentional. When something doesn't work out, it's rarely because He wants to deprive you. More often, it's because He wants to prepare you. That preparation might involve refining your character, strengthening your resilience, or deepening your dependence on Him. Sometimes the blessing is not withheld. It's simply delayed until you're ready to handle it. And sometimes the blessing you're envisioning is smaller than the one He actually intends to give you. Psychologically, this is an exercise in delayed gratification, training yourself to trust that what's coming will be worth the wait. It's difficult because we are wired to prefer immediate certainty over long-term possibility. We want closure now, clarity now, answers now. But faith teaches you to live in the tension between what is and what will be. It calls you to trust that God is not only capable of delivering on His promises, but also capable of exceeding your expectations. Philosophically, this challenges our view of loss and gain. If you believe that God is sovereign, then you must also believe that His blessings are not random. They are purposeful, precise, and perfectly timed. That means a door closing now may be the very thing ensuring the right door is open later. And if you insist on forcing your way through the wrong door, you risk forfeiting the opportunity that was meant for you all along. Consider how many biblical accounts hinge on this truth. Abraham and Sarah waited decades for the child God promised, and in the waiting, they learned that His timing was tied to His purpose. The Israelites wandered for 40 years, not because God had abandoned them, but because He was shaping them into a people who could inhabit the promise. Even Christ's ministry followed this rhythm. Certain moments came when the fullness of time had come, not before. The challenge for us is to hold rejection with open hands. Instead of gripping it as a wound, we can release it as an offering, trusting that God's no is never without a corresponding yes somewhere in His plan. That yes may not come in the form we expect, and it may not come on the timeline we prefer, but it will come in a way that aligns perfectly with His wisdom and our ultimate good. So when the door closes, resist the urge to stand there knocking forever. Step back, look around, and ask God where He's leading you next. Because often the blessing you've been praying for is already on its way. You just need to let go of what's gone so your hands are free to receive it. Rejection is never easy, but when you view it through the lens of faith, it stops being a mark of failure and becomes a marker of direction. With God, every closed door carries intention. Some protect you from what would have harmed you, some prepare you for what's ahead, and some simply position you for blessings greater than you've yet imagined. The no that wounds you today may be the reason you stand exactly where you need to be tomorrow. This is the posture of trust. To believe that God's wisdom is deeper than your understanding, that His timing is better than your impatience, and that His plan is richer than your own design. It's a conscious choice to live as though His sovereignty is not just a belief you hold, but the reality you build your decisions on. So the next time rejection comes, don't measure it by the pain of the moment. Measure it by the faith that tells you it's leading somewhere purposeful. Stand firm, keep moving, and keep your eyes open for the doors He is opening while you're still mourning the ones He closed. Because with God, rejection is never the end of your story. It's the beginning of a better chapter.